Hi everyone, I'm Utkarsh, the founder of Network Capital, here with Adam, the co-founder of Braintrust, a phenomenal decentralized network which is trying to unbundle work from employment. We're going to discuss more about the founding thesis of Braintrust, why it exists, and what's the problem it's trying to solve. But let's start from the basics, Adam. Tell us a bit about your background and how did you get interested in the unbundling of work from employment per se.
Yeah, absolutely. So my quick background, I'm a software engineer by training. I actually studied computer science at Vanderbilt University, and then came out here to the San Francisco Bay Area right out of school. And I was sort of an engineer turned entrepreneur. Braintrust is actually my fourth venture-backed marketplace. They're all four in different categories. The first one was an e-commerce company acquired by Intuit. Second one is an automotive platform, connects drivers and mechanics, acquired by Advanced Auto Parts. Third one is called Doctor on Demand, which is a large video telemedicine platform connecting doctors and patients for live medical visits. And then Braintrust, which, as you aptly point out, is helping kind of unbundle work from full-time employment. And that's been a passion of mine here for the last few years, of really just kind of letting people who do the work, who create value, keep more of that value, and work with more freedom and autonomy, and and not give up a big piece of their income to a staffing firm or an employer or a marketplace.
Perhaps an example would be helpful for listeners to really understand what this unbundling really looks like, and what are the implications for organizations and for top talent.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll talk about kind of the world of IT talent, although, because that's where Braintrust plays right now, although I think this will apply to all knowledge work in the future, and gig work as well in the real world. But I like to use this paradigm in kind of the old way and the new way. So, if you were, let's say, a Java developer or UI developer or designer, and you weren't going to specialize full-time in one particular type of role at say Google or Facebook. The old way is kind of like, you go to work for a staffing firm, they tell you where to be, what to do, what to work on, they set your rate, and then they bill out to the client in a much higher way. The new way is just like fixing all those problems. So it's, you create a profile in Braintrust, you verify and validate all your skills and work history. You can pick and choose jobs you feel like working on, when you want to work on them, from where you want to work, because it's all remote, and you set your own price. And the Braintrust network doesn't charge you any fees, just charges the client a small 10% fee, basically just to cover the overhead of the network. Because the network here, the network's role, unlike a staffing firm's role, is to increase how much they can bill you out at. The network of Braintrust, our role is the opposite. It's to get you the very best price and then get out of the way. And so it's basically like rethinking the entire paradigm of how knowledge workers, find new jobs and create value and keep that value.
Yeah, I love that. How did you get interested in this problem? Because these marketplaces are something that you've been building for some time now. Why now? And tell us more about the early days of the company.
Well, it really takes someone who has built and invested in, and frankly been kind of part of the problem with Web 2 marketplaces all these years. And so that's been my whole career, is following the Web 2 playbook, which is essentially, raising a lot of money because it's very capital intensive to build these two-sided marketplaces. You take the capital, you subsidize one or both sides, supply and or demand, until you get liquidity in the marketplace, lots of people transacting. And then if you're lucky enough to sort of break orbit there, you come out the other end with a fully investor-owned network, and those investors need a return on their capital, very rightfully so, right? They were the risk on capital in that endeavor. And so where does that return come from? It comes from an ever-increasing rake either coming through a marketplace fee that keeps going up, like you see on Fiverr or Upwork, or larger and larger margins between you and the client, thanks to a Deloitte or PwC or whatever. And so I really thought, like, Web 2 marketplaces created so much new value in the world, but most of that value just went to like 2 founders or in a couple of VCs, and almost none of the value accrued to the people who actually make their living on the network. And so when I got into blockchain, I became fascinated with this concept of tokens replacing shares of stock insofar as in the way the network is controlled. And so I don't mean, shares of stock presume you need a dividend, it's a profit return mechanism. I thought, what if you could, like, instead of having a for-profit entity run this marketplace and keep extracting value, what if you could create a nonprofit entity that's basically just a bunch of software? It's, in our case, it's a bunch of smart contracts on Ethereum. And that software essentially serves as a public good. And the public good's role is to connect talent with clients that need that talent, right? In the least extractive way possible. And so if you can figure that out, you can unlock all new kinds of opportunities, right? Like big jobs, like you see on on Braintrust, like big companies like Goldman Sachs and Nike and Nestle are posting these massive jobs and gigs and short-term and long-term and just massive things that you would never see hit a high fee marketplace like Upwork, and it would be way too expensive to do on like an Accenture or KPMG. So by creating this public good we call Braintrust, people can finally like unwind out of full-time roles and go have the economic freedom they want to pick and choose what they want to do.
How do you define Braintrust? Is it a nonprofit? Is it a movement? Is it something above a definition?
Yeah, I mean, I don't love the term nonprofit because it presumes like, I don't know if I can, I don't want to say a bunch of bad things about nonprofits either, because there are some good ones out there, but not a lot. Nonprofit just assumes like, oh, there's a bunch of bureaucracy and like the nonprofit organization itself has to protect and feed itself through donations. And like, there's a bunch of baggage on that term that I really don't like, because Braintrust is none of those things. That's why I use the term public good. So it's really sophisticated software that replaces the middlemen who just make introductions between talent and clients. So that's one. But two, I like the other word you use is movement. I mean, there's a real movement here around unbundling corporate America, right? I don't think anyone really loves, having to be a full-time employee for one company, having no variety in what you do, no autonomy, having to come to an office and commute and go to a cubicle farm. And even if you can work remotely, like you're still really constrained in what you do and how you do it. I think the main reason, and there was some study, I just heard another podcast, and sorry, I won't have the correct citation, but it was something like 70% of polled Americans wanted to be their own small business owner, / freelancer, whatever, but only 30% are. And the main thing stopping most information workers, most knowledge workers from doing so is they don't want to like go out and have to pitch clients and go find the work, right? If you're a freelance developer or freelance programmer, you're either going to join an agency or start an agency, and you're going to have to go pitch clients all the time. The cool thing, the unique thing about Braintrust, because it's owned by its users and is not a profit maximizing entity, there's unlimited demand, right? There's like clients just cannot find enough talent. And so if you are a freelance, if you're a knowledge worker thinking about leaving your full-time job and becoming a freelancer, Braintrust just solves your biggest barrier, which is going and finding work, because there's an unlimited amount of work on Braintrust for you. Oh, and by the way, we're just starting to bundle on health insurance for US folks, because that's the number 2 barrier to joining Braintrust as a freelancer. So now you could join Braintrust and get health coverage the same as you would if you join a normal company.
I was about to come to that, because employment typically means more than a paycheck, right? There's community, there's health insurance and other things that you talked about. So have you all given it a thought that how can freelancers avail similar benefits as traditional employment and have the autonomy, mastery, and purpose along the way?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say it's not just my view. I mean, the data shows like the main benefit that folks, hang on to full-time employment situations, at least in the US, for is health insurance, because we don't have like great government options here. So that is the big barrier. That's why we spend a lot of time integrating health insurance partners into the platform. The other things you mentioned, I would argue, like mastery, autonomy, community, you're actually probably going to get more of and more concentration of and more of your own choosing by entering the global freelance community, right? If you work at Oracle, you're sort of limited to, and I don't mean to pick on Oracle, but like you're sort of limited to like the type of people that work at Oracle and the specialties and subspecialties those folks have. And you're going to hit a ceiling potentially at some point if you're interested in other things that Oracle just can't offer you. Whereas when you join the Discord at Braintrust, there's so many different fields, different folks from around the world. It's a very passion-driven community. Like we're all here because we want to be. And so you have this, like, it's a much more, and frankly, more diverse community, I think, than you find at a single company.
That's a really interesting aspect about community building. I see that on Network Capital as well, where our community members around the world seem to be forthcoming, willing to share their insights with others, help others grow, and it comes naturally to them, as opposed to people who are restricted to only, say, one company or one institution. Sometimes there are limits to what you can accomplish there.
I mean, your group is living proof that that gap is huge, and folks are craving things outside of their own corporate environment. I mean, you guys are proof of that at scale.
Yeah. So Adam, tell me a bit about education. So if you look at education, the early model was that you study for about 20, 25, 28 years, get your master's, MBA, and then you're expected to work for a very long time and retire. And now we are seeing this unbundling of education as well, where people are looking at education like work in modular parts. Is there an age demographic that's very strongly represented in Braintrust? And do you think that retirement is dead? Now people are more likely to alternate between study and work on their own terms.
Well, there's a bunch of interesting points kind of bundled in there. So, I mean, I'll take the first one, education. In so many fields, I mean, think about how many fields today where people make a living that's just not taught in school, or at least not taught well, right? I studied computer science at a top 15 engineering school. And it was completely useless. And now I graduated 16, 17 years ago. So I'm not a fresh grad. But back then it was completely useless. I can't imagine it's any better now because the tech has moved up so quickly, right? The field just outpaces the rate at which the traditional educational institutions are going to teach it. And you're not going to get any on the job experience anyway. So I think, so that's one point, is like education in America can't unbundle quickly enough. That's why I love places like Coursera and YouTube. You can learn anything in the world for free, basically, on YouTube. And then, like picking what you want to do. I like this whole concept of retirement. I mean, I feel like, and then look, and I don't want to be naive. I know not all fields can figure this out right now, but I feel like one of the joys and real benefits of freelancing is you get to specialize, right? You get to really just pick one or two things that you love to do, and then only take jobs that involve those skills, right? And if you love your specialty, and I know not everybody does. I mean, when I was a software developer, there were things I didn't love about it. But if you can pick a specialty that you do love and then sort of do it as often as you want or need to make a living, like what does retirement mean, right? Like if you can do that with half your time and travel the other half, or be with your family, or pursue a hobby that doesn't make money the other half, like why retire, right? Like you've kind of found your zen at that point. So that's one of my passions with Braintrust, is like helping people find that zen space where they can work as much or little as they want, and then like pursue being, having a happy life with the rest of it.
Awesome. And is there an age demographic that's well represented, or it's people across the spectrum on Braintrust?
Yeah, it's all over the spectrum. It's anyone who has skills that clients need. So that's pretty broad. I would say like it definitely not a lot of people right out of college, right? Because colleges do not equip people with the skills that companies need. They just don't. And so I would urge anyone who's thinking about going to college, don't do it unless you really want that experience, right? It could be a fun social experience, but it is not going to help you make a living in most fields unless you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer. You have to do it. In the engineering fields and design and graphic arts and UX, you do not need to go to college. It's not going to help you. And so our age, we have a big bell curve, obviously, but it starts older than you'd think.
Got it. Tell me a bit about the passion economy, and is there a difference between, say, the creator economy, ownership economy, and the passion economy? Because Braintrust seem to be optimizing for all of the above.
Yeah, I think passion economy and creator economy to me are very similar, if not the same. It's like, I mean, you wouldn't be a creator unless you're passionate, right? I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. But so those things, I think are similar. The ownership economy is a whole different construct, right? That's a different economic situation where if you're participating in the ownership economy, you are literally you literally have ownership and control in the network where you make your living, right? So if you're a recording artist on Audius, you own Audius tokens, which represent control in the Audius network, right? Which is a decentralized Spotify, if you haven't heard of that. If you are talent on Braintrust and earn Braintrust tokens, you now control the Braintrust network through those tokens, and you get to decide, have your vote on the future of the network, what the fees should be, who should be allowed in, what the standards of quality should be, all the things that like a corporation would decide without consulting you as a talent member. You now have literal ownership in the future of your network.
Absolutely. And I was wondering, when you get a Braintrust token, a Btrust token, it doesn't really replace currency, is it? But in time, it could. Could you explain a bit what that transaction entails, and what's the tangible benefit of me as, say, a talent or a network connector, or whatever, of having that Braintrust token?
Yeah, so there's only a finite number of Braintrust tokens in supply. It's 250 million, fixed supply, can never mint anymore. That's written in the smart contract. And it's used as an incentive mechanism to incentivize people to build the network. That could mean inviting talent, screening new talent, inviting clients, onboarding clients, helping write marketing copy, participating in promotional thing. I mean, just all the things that a company that is as big as the Braintrust network would have thousands of employees by now. Braintrust has 45,000 community members that all sort of participate in the token economy at some scale. And so that's how you earn the token. And then what the token means, the meaning of the token is control of the network, right? You get to propose new ideas for the roadmap. You get to vote yes or no on whether you think other people's ideas are worth completing. Other features of the token help you build your business and that kind of thing. It's not a payment. It's not meant to be a payment layer. All the jobs are paid in dollars. People need to pay their rent and all their expenses. Like, you do that in dollars. And so, Braintrust is the Braintrust token's decentralized. People can use it for anything they want. People use non-fiat currencies as currency all over the world, right? Whether you trade a case of wine for an old Porsche or something like that, right? Those two are then currencies, but doesn't mean that they're universal currencies, right? You can't just like buy things with a case of wine at Walmart. So I look at the Braintrust token the same way, right? The Braintrust token is a it's a membership ticket basically into an organization where you make your living.
Fascinating. So Adam, is there something unique about Web 3.0 that enables the ecosystem to blossom? Could you not theoretically do it as a Web 2.0 system with a relatively low take rate?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the answer is you couldn't. Web 2 and Web 3 are opposites. Web 2 is a for-profit entity, controls the network. So the Web 2 Braintrust would be Upwork or Fiverr. And a for-profit company's fiduciary, its legal obligation to its shareholders is to return as much shareholder value as possible. And so if the management team at, say, Upwork said, you know what, we're going to not take as much value as we could, the board could and should and would fire that management team and replace it with someone who would extract as much value as possible. So it's just, they're two different paradigms, right? They're mutually exclusive, Web 2 and Web 3. And so Web 3 network's job is the opposite. The Web 3 network's job is to extract as little value as possible while allowing the users who own and control that network to keep as much value as possible.
Awesome. How are you growing today? I believe I am a Braintrust network connector. So like hundreds of people joined the community so that's a really robust channel in place. And I think I get paid if somebody takes up a job and they get paid by their employer. What are the other growth channels? Because you've reached a significant critical mass pretty quickly.
Yeah, well, thank you for being a great connector. It's you guys are the primary growth driver for the network. In the early days, we had to bootstrap. So we had, a sales team who would go out and get clients. I was myself and Gabe were the first salespeople. And in the first, say, 100 or so talent, I brought on myself. And then those 100 people brought the next 1,000 people and so on and so on. Now, literally 100%, we just heard the stat this morning in our all hands, 100% of our enterprise expansion comes through word of mouth, through the connectors or accounts expanding themselves. And then, on the talent side, it's mostly talent referring other talent or great connectors, again, like bringing folks in. We don't spend money on acquisition.
That's awesome. We don't either. So we're a big fan of the referral model ourselves. But how about the enterprises? You mentioned Goldman, Nike. These are pretty big names. And I'm in touch with a couple of colleagues at Braintrust that I've referred a few or in the process of referring a few. So referral I get, but are there inbounds as well? Enterprises coming to you and saying that, hey, we find what you're doing interesting. Tell us more how we can recruit talent from here.
Yeah, that was one of the more surprising pieces of this as the network grew is the inbounds there's almost more than we can handle. And so we actually built a program that was just announced a couple of days ago called the Braintrust Node Program. And this basically, it's for existing agencies. Let's say like you run a dev shop or a design UX shop or something like that. And, you're pretty big. You've got, maybe you're doing 10, 20, 30 million a year in revenue. If you sign up and sort of get through the screening, you can become a Braintrust node. And now you pay the network fee, the 10% fee, which obviously drives value into the network and the protocol. But what you get is like exclusive access to some categories, some subcategories of the inbound leads. So like this, there's this first example is this agency called Kunai, which joined as a node in January of 2022. And they're doing 20 million a year in revenue, and they're paying the network fee on Braintrust, but they're a huge fintech shop. So they're going to serve all the banking clients and fintech clients. And so they're really growing their business by bringing all their talent and clients onto Braintrust. And so that was sort of our V1 answer to like, how do you handle all this inbound?
Got it. And I also noticed that there's something interesting about your freelancing assignments. One, they tend to be pretty well paid, and then they're not super short. So is there a rationale for that?
Yeah, good question. This is like kind of a point of criticism for us sometimes now, which is ironic, right? Because most people want, longer, ongoing things. But yeah, I mean, when we set up to build the network, we wanted to achieve the kind of the hardest part first, which is high paying ongoing gigs. That's kind of like, that was the holy grail before Web3 was like, because you can get a low paying short-term gig anywhere. That's what Fiverr is all about, right? And that's what Upwork's all about. Average job size on Upwork's, $200 or something. And so we specifically position the network to capture those higher paid, longer term ones. But then we've heard a lot from our community saying, hey, like, what if I just want like a 30-day gig and then I'm, off to Bali for the following month. And so, yeah, we're trying to incentivize people to bring more of those shorter term gigs on as well.
Have you followed the Great Resignation, the broader trend that's going on in the US and other parts of the world?
The Great Resignation was a train that hit us when we happened to be standing on the tracks. It's like it was, I think, caused by COVID, right? Like COVID sort of proved that most jobs can be done remotely, most knowledge worker jobs, right? We want to be fair to people who deliver people packages and food. But for folks who make their living in front of a computer like you and I do, most of these jobs can be done remotely. And so I think it showed a lot of people like, hey, I don't have to live in this expensive city that I don't like anymore. I don't have to commute on the 101 freeway anymore. I think that all those realizations, triggered this Great Resignation. And then, like I said, Braintrust just happened to be standing in the right place at the right time and caught all this talent that was unwinding out of their full-time jobs that they didn't want anymore. And they, wanted to freelance instead. Great Resignation, as far as I can tell, doesn't mean like a bunch of 30 and 40 somethings just dropped out of the workforce, right? Like they still have bills to pay. It's not like everyone's wealthy all of a sudden, but I think it's this like, this remote work wave crashed over the economy and changed, the expectations employees have.
Yeah, I mean, before Network Capital, I used to work at Microsoft, and I would imagine that there would be a lot of folks of big tech companies part of the network now. How do you think of employee stock options versus the Braintrust, or how do people think about their long-term wealth creation when they join a decentralized network such as Braintrust?
Yeah, I mean, Braintrust is a network that connects people with opportunity, right? So if you're going to write software for a startup on Braintrust, you're still going to get stock options in that startup. If you're, committing code and doing heavy projects for Goldman Sachs, like you probably still get RSUs or whatever, right? I'm not speaking for them in particular, but like equity is part of every comp package, and like that doesn't change in this world.
Got it. So, just moving on, what are some of the more important goals for you in 2022? Are you looking to press a few levers?
Yeah, well, look, I think 2022 has the potential to be the year that networks like Braintrust could actually consolidate the talent space. And let me sort of I'll give an example of what I mean by that. So think about the vacation rental space before Airbnb came along, right? It was basically like travel agents and newspaper ads and Craigslist postings, and it was very sketchy, not a good experience, no quality, no reputation, could be dangerous at times. Airbnb came in with a superior experience and consolidated the space. They're not the majority of the space, right? But they're certainly the biggest player. They have the plurality of the space. I think Braintrust has the same opportunity, but for talent, right? Before Braintrust, like, okay, you can play the safe bet and go to KPMG or Accenture. They're going to pay you, pretty lousy rates, but it's a steady paycheck and health benefits. But that's it. You get no autonomy. You don't get to pick who you work for when you work, and most of the value goes to Accenture through the markup. Or you can start an agency and like get random clients, and half them won't pay you, and like now you're in like a collections business, and like you're like running a business you never wanted to run, right? So like, it's this, the talent industry, it's not great right now if you want autonomy. But the Braintrust model has the potential, well, it already is, at scale, fixing those problems. And so I don't think Braintrust will ever like be bigger than all the consulting firms, at least like that's not the near-term goal, but I think it can consolidate the space like Airbnb has.
Adam, are there people who are looking for additional source of income on your platform? Things like like just like they have a day job, but they are also on Braintrust trying to just increase their monthly income, or they're just hobbies looking for a fun weekend project, but over a long period of time.
Yeah, I mean that's the best way to get started with a network like Braintrust is like pick up a 10 to 20 hour a week engagement. That's probably why we're getting criticism that we don't have enough of these 10 to 20 hour a week engagements on the platform, which is a fair criticism. Or like, do what you did and like just join as a connector and, kind of monetize your network in your background, and earn tokens that way, right? There's a bunch of ways you can sort of just dip your toe in.
Got it. Do you see that, like, this with the new norm of work, creator economy, passion economy, all of these things are becoming more mainstream now? Do you see other kinds of brain trust like models come about? What does competition mean to you? Or you welcome many other decentralized networks coming to fore?
Well, I don't know of any sort of similar networks to Braintrust, but the competition for Braintrust is the old way, right? It's the Web 2 kind of staffing firms. Like Braintrust, the Web 3 are the disruptors, the economic disruptors to Web 2. I mean, I think there's other cool Web 3 networks, like I mentioned, Audius, decentralized streaming audio. There's Gitcoin, which is like a decentralized network for people who contribute to and makes open source software better. So it's very complementary to Braintrust. They're pretty cool. But like, this is still a really new field. We need more people working on Web3.
And I've heard you talk about how disruption happens before. So could you, give us, how do you see this wave of disruption take place, and incumbent versus, networks like yours?
Yeah, I mean, look, disruption only happens when somebody can offer like a 2 to 5 or 10x better solution, right? It can't be incrementally better, right? Like it's, Uber was like 10 times better than riding in a taxi or hailing a taxi or paying for a taxi or getting one to come to you. Like the whole taxi experience was completely broken and Uber 10x'd it. And so it's not until you deliver just like a step function better experience and economics that disruption happens. And so I think the fair criticism of most blockchain tech so far is like, they're solutions looking for problems, right? They're not really solving a problem for anybody. It's blockchain is complexity for complexity's sake. You hear a lot. I completely agree with that. But I really think being able to own and control the network where you make your living is 10x better than working at Accenture or trying to squeak out a living on Upwork, or slaving away in a full-time W-2 job that you'd hate, right? That you only 10% of the stuff you do is something that you think is worthwhile. And so autonomy, better economics, control, that's a fuel for that. Those are the ingredients for disruption, I think.
Can anyone get deplatformed on Braintrust?
Yeah, sure. So the interesting thing, Braintrust is a decentralized network, meaning anyone can participate, like anyone can become a connector, get their code, start referring. But there's a twist of identity involved in Braintrust that doesn't exist maybe in some other networks. And so if you're, you have to, in order to provide services as a talent member, you have to become verified by the community, right? The community sets the standards for that and actually does the screening. I mean, the people who are involved in founding the network have nothing to do with it at this point. So the community has decided, right, if you can't get through those screenings, or if you're somehow a bad actor, you could lose your account on the platform. Now you can always reapply. Nothing stops you from reapplying. But because the community curates itself, it is possible for people to get banned. I'm not sure. I don't think it's ever happened. I mean, I'm not sure. I haven't checked. But yeah, because there is a real world identity tie-in, it is possible.
Yeah. I noticed that Braintrust also does community building exercises or, really interesting experiences. Last week, you had a very interesting writer come and share his thoughts on Web 3.0. So I noticed that even you're intentional about community building. But if you look back, say the past year and a half, the culture of the community, is it because of the interventions that you've done, or is it the community run, community managed? Is it organically happening?
I can say 100 with 100% clarity that it is happening on its own. I have nothing to do with it. I can barely keep up with Discord. I think I show my age when I complain about how hard Discord is to use, because it's like it's a bit overwhelming. No, all those kind of webinars and things you see posted to YouTube and the kind of welcome new community members and that kind of stuff, all completely community driven. It's members trying to help other members networking with other members. These folks are creating new relationships on the Braintrust platform that, 20 years ago would have been happening in the break room at Microsoft or at the PHP developer conference, or, the .NET users group meetup, all those things that we used to go to, or at least I used to go to in real life, are now happening in Discord and Telegram and whatever. So, in the very early days, we started those things, we set them up, but it's really taken on a life of its own. And it's, it's the most surprising part of all this for me was like how hard it is to keep up with. I run one of the core teams. There's, probably 10 like big teams now that contribute a lot to the Braintrust network. I've never met most of them. It's hard. Like, we try to capture what they're doing on our Twitter account, but even that's hard, right? It's just kind of like a big decentralized network now.
No, that's great. You talked previously about ownership. Are there long-term benefits of having ownership in a network that's fast growing? If yes, what does that look like?
Yeah, ownership for us means control over the future of the network where you make your living. And so, I think, there's, like I said, there could never be any more Braintrust tokens than there are now. The more tokens you have, the more influence you have. And I think the bigger the network gets, the more important that is, as to, if this ends up becoming a network that connects, billions or hundreds of millions of the world's knowledge workers with clients, like, what's control over that network worth?
Its influence, it has a lot of advantage. In a way, there are a lot of parallels to how, say, an effective democracy would look like, or an ideal democracy. Do you think so?
I think that's a really interesting topic that you brought up. And one of the very fair criticisms of a governance model like Braintrust. So Braintrust is one token, one vote. It is not one member, one vote, right? Where like American citizens, for instance, all get one vote regardless of their wealth. And then those votes delegate up into, the delegation, the, electoral college, et cetera. I think for running a society, the American system's much better, because what one token, one vote essentially can eventually turn into is a plutocracy. And that may not be the best thing, right? We'll see. Now that these rules can be changed, right? It could be, I think this concept of quadratic voting that was introduced by Vitalik from Ethereum is really interesting, where, certain, like, it gets closer to sort of a more American style democracy where, the number of users that want something becomes more important than how many tokens they have, is the oversimplification of quadratic voting. And so I could see Braintrust governance evolving over time from its relatively simplistic form right now.
Got it. And just like staying on the ownership question a bit more, hypothetically speaking, what do you think Karl Marx would think of Braintrust or decentralized networks, and what would Adam Smith say about it?
That's a great question. I've not been asked that one before. Karl Marx would hate it because it is not socialism. It's not the government commanding how and where and who should create and marshal resources. It's the opposite of all those things. I think Adam Smith would love it because it is about as close to free market capitalism as it gets.
Got it. But would Marx be happy that at least workers have owners and they can control some of the network and the outcomes, or he would still be grumpy?
Yeah. Oh, I think he would generally be grumpy about all of this because it doesn't keep everybody level, right? If his, you know, if he was advocate, and I'm not an expert on Karl Marx, I specifically try not to be one. But, you know, I think it's, you know, keeping everyone level and the same is a spurious goal. I think it's actually counterproductive for humans.
Yeah, so you would say equality of opportunities, not equality of outcome, right? It seems to me that that's what you're gunning towards.
You said it far better than I did.
Adam, when you look at the Braintrust network today, does everyone find a job, or do you have within top talent, like say the 1% who really get the meat of the best opportunities?
Oh no, it's very very evenly spread. And I'll tell you why. It's we built the network to be extremely enterprise focused to begin with. So there's tons of opportunity for, you know, people with 2-3+ years of enterprise experience, right? It's a relatively low bar, but you can't have no experience. And all of those opportunities look more or less the same with some outliers, right? There's some like crazy machine learning stuff at the very top, you know, that would pay thousands of dollars per hour or whatever, that, you know, maybe only a few people are qualified for in the world. But sort of the, you know, the bulk of the opportunity on Braintrust is, you know, stuff that anyone with kind of basic enterprise grade experience, either in UX or product management or software development, should have equal opportunity to. And that's how you build a great, you know, big liquid marketplace.
Got it. Are you looking to diversify, go beyond tech, maybe finance, maybe writing, maybe other kinds of jobs?
Yeah, I love this idea of this Braintrust model, sort of, you know, liberating talent in other categories. So it won't be me who does it, right? I'm a tech person, and that's the only thing I'm good at. It's the only thing I'll ever be good at. I'm not a CPA, not an attorney, but I've had CPAs and attorneys come to me and say, you know, there's no reason for a law firm to like have a ton of paralegals on full-time staff. Like, why don't we have Braintrust for paralegals? And, you know, our response is like, cool, let's do it. You know, like apply for a grant, let's vote on it and go do it, and use our software, right? Because it's open source, right? Anybody can use it. And so, yeah, look, I think we will see Braintrust Legal, Braintrust Accounting, Braintrust Compliance, you know, any of these, like there's nothing special about being a computer programmer, right? You're just someone who has a certain skill and you specialize in that skill, and lots of companies need it. There's no difference between that and a paralegal and a certified public accountant, you know, and or a technical writer, right? They're all the same thing. And so I really, you know, I could see Braintrust serving many more categories like that.
Gotcha. It seems to me that scaling Braintrust has been energizing and fun, but have there been some challenges along the way? And if yes, what have you learned from them?
I think my co-founder Gabe said this best on Twitter the other day. So building a software startup is like getting punched in the face every day. Building a two-sided marketplace, web-enabled two-sided marketplace, is like getting punched from each side every day because you're serving two customers. Building a Web3 marketplace is like getting punched from each side and the back every day. The back one being, you know, compliance is a real challenge in this space. It's something we've taken very seriously and I've been very diligent about. But you know, it's a real issue in our space. And so, like to say, you know, we've had challenges. I mean, every startup has challenges for sure. I think the more, you know, you're sort of going to change the world through creating just a 10x better experience for people economically, and UX in a category as important as what you do for a living, like, of course it's going to be challenging, right? Otherwise, like, people would have figured it out and incrementally improved their way there already.
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. One, that's a profound metaphor. Congrats, Gabe. Very articulate.
All Gabe.
All Gabe. And what you talked about, challenges being omnipresent, is also something that every founder intimately knows. But you mentioned something about compliance, and our listeners would be very interested in understanding what that means and how it applies to their work life.
Absolutely. So, I mean, one of the big issues, very valid concerns about the blockchain space, is compliance with tax laws, securities laws, CFTC. There's investor protection. Take the SEC, for example. I mean, their job is to protect investors from fraudulent actors, right? And so if you start a for-profit company and want to go public, like, it's very hard to be a fraud, like have fraud as your business model and go public on the NYSE, right? And what that regulation layer does is it creates this like very safe, trusted environment for investors to pour capital into the US. This is what I would say the main reason the US has won over other jurisdictions where regulation just isn't taken as seriously or enforced as much. And so many token projects are just securities hiding behind a blockchain, right? They're basically unregistered securities, and unregistered securities are magnets for fraud and abuse. And that's how, lots of people can lose money and lose faith in the system. And so, the SEC, I empathize with what their job is, right? They have to walk this line between allowing for innovation, right? Like letting tech innovation sort of do its thing without like becoming this new vehicle for just people fraud, right? Stealing money, defrauding investors. And so a lot of tokens like look like shares of stock because they're giving dividends back or whatever. And they should be registered as securities. And so that's, the SEC's job. There's other tokens like ours where it's a governance system. It's sort of like a membership ticket to the network. It is like its cash value is not relevant to the operation of the network. So it's not a security, right? And so people say like, oh, there's not regulatory clarity in blockchain in the US. There is. You may not like it, but it is clear, right? There's a Howey test. There's like, the rules are actually clear. I'm not saying the rules don't need to be updated, right? I think there's some, we do another hour on how we can update these rules from the 1930s. But the fact is the rules are the rules. And if you're going to run a project in the United States, you have to be compliant. It cannot be, a security dressed up as something else. And so, I would encourage any founder looking to stand up a project in this space, like, first of all, really think about what you're doing, right? If you're just trying to create a profit return mechanism or a dividend machine, but hide it on a blockchain, like, don't bother doing it in the US. They're going to get you, or they should get you. And two, be thoughtful about system design and regulatory compliance early on. We work with an amazing team at Fenwick that's helped us from day one, and let them help you early and often, because it's something that yes, it could slow innovation down, but like, these are important rules, and these rules that are enforced by the SEC and CFTC and others are one of the reasons America has the most vibrant, equities market on the planet.
Well, really well said. Last question. You have alluded to this before, but let me ask you, is there a shared truth that everyone on Braintrust Network believes in? And does that link to, say, the best part of your job today?
Well, it's hard to tell because it's a big network now, and we haven't pulled all of them in quite a while. But if I were to guess, I would say sort of the passion around autonomy and control over how you make your living is, I would say, like the core DNA we probably all share. Just like, like the Bitcoin community has this shared love around like non-reliance on state actors, right? Or non-reliance on fiat government controlled money. I mean, I'm a member of the Bitcoin community as well, not a big one, but I love that. I respect that about the Bitcoin community. I think the Braintrust community would be love of autonomy around how you make your living.
Fascinating. Well, Adam gave, as a member of the community, Braintrust, and a connector, I've benefited tremendously. I love the energy, and we're in the process of exploring a collaboration. I hope a lot of Network Capital members give it a shot. I love talking with you and your thoughts on from Marx to Bitcoin to regulation to why you do what you do. I think everyone who listens to it, who watches it, will have a lot to take away. Is there anything that I should have asked you, but I haven't? Any parting words that you'd like to share?
Well, I was going to say you really covered all the bases well. I don't think I've talked about regulatory and Karl Marx in the same conversation. So, well done on the questioning, and really enjoyed it. I think we hit all these points that matter. Makes sense that you're an important part of the Braintrust community. So, you've got kind of an inside out look at it, and we're big fans of Network Capital as well, and really appreciate you having us on.
Well, thank you, Adam. To lots of more collaborations to come. See you soon.